Garrett back here, and spooky season is upon us. Halloween is about here, and I wanted to go through something a little bit cool, something that's going to bring you back, something that's going to bring a lot of nostalgia to me, and hopefully some of you guys watching today. Now, as a kid, Halloween was so special, not just because of the holiday itself and dressing up and the candy and the costumes, but it was also special because of the Halloween specials that used to come on TV once a year. Growing up as a kid of the 80s, I watched a ton of these specials every single year. They were literally my absolute favorite and definitely a gateway into my love of horror. Now, it seems like a lot of these things don't exist anymore, but it was an event. Every single year you would see some of these specials, old and new, hit your TV around this time. And man, I just loved it. It just helped with the whole vibe of fall, of Halloween, of spooky season. And I would tape a lot of these specials and continuously watch them every year. Now, I made a list of my 10 made-for-TV kids Halloween specials from the 70s and 80s. Now, there's so many I could have added on this list, but I wanted to stick to 10. But I do want you to put in the comments down below from the 70s and 80s, are there any that I missed that you just absolutely love? That's what makes these lists so special. Not everybody's going to be the same, but hopefully I unlock some new ones or some memories for you guys today. So the first one I'm going to talk about is from 1978. Now, this movie is called Witch's Night Out. Now, again, if you forgot about this movie and you see the animation, you're going to be like, oh my God, I remember this. This was a movie that came out in 78. I saw it in the 80s. This is a cartoon. It's animated. It's got voice actors from like Dan Aykroyd, Catherine O'Hara, and Gilda Radner. Now, what's wild about this thing is the animation is just so wild and wacky. It's something I've never seen before. And what's so funny about the animation is it's almost like a lot of these characters are naked. It was always super weird for me growing up when I saw these characters and I'm like, is this person naked? What are they? And when they transform into things like the monsters, it's actually really, really cool. Now, what I loved the most and what I remembered the most about Witch's Night Out was that opening theme song. And I will go out there and say it's one of the coolest jingles I've ever heard in my life. Now, tell me you do not remember that jingle. Tell me you do not have memories unlocked after hearing that. Halloween, witch magic, magic, Halloween, 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 witch magic, Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. It was so sick. It was something I've remembered since I was a little kid watching this for the first time. I think it did air on NBC around this time of year, but what's really cool is that it actually does have a physical media release. It's actually got 2 physical media releases. This is a brand new one that just came out from MVD. So what's really cool about this one is the quality's actually kind of upticked on it, and you do get the Gift of Winter, which I guess was kind of the precursor to this. But yeah, really cool to have this on physical media because a lot of the ones I'm going to talk about are kind of lost and not on things like DVD or Blu-ray and stuff like that. But that's Witch's Night Out. Like I said, there is a brand new DVD from MVD Visual you can get, or you can find this on YouTube, which is a really good quality as well. So definitely check this one out this holiday season. All right, the next one is a real cool one, guys. This was one of my absolute favorites as a kid. This was one that we taped and we watched every year. Not just watched every year. My neighbors and I loved this so much. We had like a Halloween special tape that we had. I had one, they had one, and it was one that actually we went to and watched all year round. And this was one of the specials on it. This is from 1979. I think it aired on ABC around this time of year. And this is the Halloween that almost wasn't. Also known as Dracula Saves the World. This was just really cool because honestly, this was like my first introduction to a lot of these Universal monster type characters. Now again, this was the late 70s. I wasn't even born yet when this came out, but when I was a kid, this would air every Halloween. And like I said, we taped it and we would watch this thing year round. Now, what's wild about this is you had a lot of those Universal monsters. You had Dracula, you had Frankenstein, you had the Wolfman, you had Igor, and you had a witch. Now, basically what this was the witch wanted to stop Halloween, and Dracula kind of had to save it. Now, this came off as almost like a comedy, but there was some definitely bits in here that we loved as a kid. There was a scene where Frankenstein dances and then knocks something over, and we used to think that was really funny as a kid. Very graceful. Now, man, there's something about this movie that just brings me back to my childhood because, again, this was such a staple for me. And honestly, like I said, it was the first introduction I had to a lot of these characters. Now, as far as I know, this has been stuck on VHS for such a long time, and I would absolutely love to get my hands on a nice version of this special. Check out on YouTube, you can find it. It's The Halloween That Almost Wasn't, or As Dracula Saves the World. But man, this was such an awesome special, and if you've never seen this, now's the time to check it out. Again, this is another animated one, another animated special that came out in 1979, but it was definitely one that was on constant rotation in the 80s, and it's called The Pumpkin That Couldn't Smile. An animated special, and it's actually got Raggedy Ann and Andy kind of in this thing. I don't know how they fit in this, but I remember them as a kid, but they are part of this special as well. It's about this jack-o'-lantern that he doesn't think anybody wants him, and it's Halloween, and he hasn't been bought, and they're trying to explain to him that there's got to be a lonely boy out there that wants a jack-o'-lantern. So it's kind of a fun little movie. I mean, it's kind of sad, but at the same time, it's got that happy ending, and they go on this little adventure, and I just remember a lot of different things from this. When the jack-o'-lantern would cry, pumpkin seeds would come out of his eyes. The Pumpkin That Couldn't Smile is just one that I watched all the time as a kid. It was on that little tape of all these specials that we taped off TV, and it's one that maybe not a lot of people have seen. So from 1979, The Pumpkin That Couldn't Smile is one that I would add to my watch list, and if you've got kids out there, it's a perfect one for them to check out. All right, the next one is we're going to stay in the animated route. This came out in 1980. This was one that was on the tape that we had, that Halloween special tape that we would watch all the time, and it was called The Trouble with Miss Switch. Now, basically what this was is an animated special about these kids in school, and they get this substitute teacher, and something just doesn't seem right. Well, come to find out, she's actually a witch, and they kind of uncover that based on her doing these different magic tricks within the school. And this aired on ABC back in the day, but like I said, this was one that we had taped one year and put on our tape, and we would constantly watch it year after year after year for a long period of time. Now, I do see there was actually a sequel to this, which I don't recall. I mean, we may have had it, but The Trouble with Miss Switch is one that I remember watching a lot. And as far as I know, this does not have any physical media release of this or the sequel. But if you want to check it out, like I said, this was definitely a lost kind of Halloween type special, but it's The Trouble with Miss Switch, and you can check it out on YouTube. All right, we're going to bring it back. It's still animated, guys. There's a lot of animated ones on here. This one was, as a kid, it was a book that I loved. I first heard about the book. I read the book in elementary school by the teachers, and I absolutely fell in love with it. We read it around this time. I was in elementary school. They read it around Halloween, and I just fell in love with it. So much so that I collected the book, and I think there was a couple sequels as well. Well, as a kid, I found out that there was actually a Halloween special that was coming out based on this book, and that is called Bunnicula. Now, if you guys don't recall this book or this special, the book was about a family, and they have pets, and the pets can kind of interact and talk, and that's kind of your main characters there. Well, the family adopts a bunny. Vegetables start losing their juice throughout the house, and it becomes kind of a mystery, like, who is doing this at the house? Who is doing this in the town in the middle of the night? And that little rabbit Bunnicula might be the culprit. Now, this is another one that would be great for kids. Maybe it's unlocking a lot of memories for you, but you can find the Halloween special of Bunnicula on YouTube now, because this is another one that, as far as I know, does not have any kind of physical media format, and I'm not sure if we'll ever get one. All right, this next one is from 1984. 1984 seems like a year that a lot of things were coming out, especially for kids. I did a video talking about the creepiest kids movies of the 80s, and there was a lot from 1984. Same thing here. 1984, we had a lot of specials as well. This one was another animated special that, like I said, I had on this tape, and this is one I watched on a regular basis, and it was called Which Witch is Which? And it was about these two characters, Buttons and Rusty. They were like this fox and a bear, and they were basically like little kids, but they were a fox and a bear, and they were at this campground where they lived with their families, and this campground was just being run by a couple adults. There was kids there. The camp is throwing like a Halloween party, so that's kind of like the backstory of what's going on here. You've got these other two people that are looking to rob this camp, and these characters, Buttons and Rusty, get in like a lot of trouble and kind of mix up with some of these robbers or crooks or whatever. And it's just kind of a fun little kid story. Again, this would be great for the kids. Maybe this is unlocking some memories. If you grew up around this time, you were a little kid around the 70s or 80s, you might remember this one. But yeah, this was a fun one for me. It's not one anybody ever talks about, but it's definitely worth checking out. It's a fun animated special that takes place around Halloween because there's a Halloween party. You see all the kids dressed up. It's really, really fun. So highly recommended. We're sticking to 1984. This was one that was on the Disney Channel. This is one that my friends and I watched every single year, not just on Halloween, all year round. And this was a special called Disney's Halloween Treat. Basically, it was a compilation of all these different Disney movies and cartoons that had kind of spooky scenes in them. And if you know Disney, there was a lot of those as kids back in the day. So this was a special they put called Disney Halloween Treat. Had a great opening song, Disney's Halloween Treat.
Disney's Halloween Treat.
Had like the skeletons dancing around. I mean, we absolutely loved this one as a kid. This is a hidden gem for anybody who maybe hasn't seen this. It was something that was kind of primarily to the Disney Channel. We didn't have that as a kid, but my neighbors did. So that's where we kind of watched it and taped it. And it was something we watched all the damn time. And it was hosted by the man in the mirror, or the mirror on the wall, like that guy from the Snow White. He kind of hosted this show. And I think they did come out with a newer version throughout the years where you had a different host. But the one that we watched, the face in the mirror, was the host as of the one we watched as a kid. But super cool. It's got all your favorite Disney movies in there. You've got scenes from like Sword in the Stone with the magician, and you've got scene with the witch from Snow White. It's just really, really cool. Really well done. Disney's Halloween Treat. I'm pretty positive you can get this on YouTube. As far as any physical media release, nothing. Maybe a VHS, but I do not own it. I still own that black blank tape with all these specials on it, and that's one of the reasons why I did this video today, is because I did come across that tape, and I wanted to talk about these because they were so special to me, and hopefully it can unlock a lot of memories for you. This was either strictly on the Disney Channel, but for some reason I feel like this was on like that Sunday night Disney movie of the night type thing. I don't know what that was called, but they used to do it every Sunday, because I can remember the commercials leading up to this. And as a kid, I was like, oh my God, I gotta see this. This looks super scary. And it was called Mr. Boogedy. For a long time, I was calling it the Boogedy Man, but it was Mr. Boogedy, and he used to go boogedy, boogedy, boo. And he kind of almost looked like the Emperor from Star Wars. That's what I remembered. And it was about this family who moved into this house, and it was kind of haunted. It was haunted by this guy, Mr. Boogedy. And he was doing all these tricks, and he was trying to get them out of the house. And it's just a real cool, fun 80s Halloween special, and it's one that is available on physical media. I have this double pack with the sequel, but Mr. Boogedy's the one I watched as a kid because that was in the 80s. I think the sequel might have been a 90s sequel of this, but the original one is the one I highly recommend, and I do believe it might even have a Blu-ray from Disney. It might be a little expensive now, but Mr. Boogedy, I'm not sure if it's on Disney Plus. It could be, or maybe YouTube, but definitely one to check out. I think this is a great Halloween special. All right, this one is from 1985, and this is an all-time classic. This is one that I think everybody has seen before. Just like the Peanuts Charlie Brown special, this one is kind of well-known, and this is the Garfield Halloween special. This was a staple for me growing up. This was a staple for a lot of kids, even all the way in the 90s. I think this was on constant rotation on television. But it's such a great episode. It's actually really cool. It's actually pretty spooky as well. Obviously, it's animated. It's Garfield. But him and Odie go out trick-or-treating, and they're looking for candy. And, you know, they get on a boat, and they go into this house far beyond the lake to get more candy because they just want candy. And it's got some good tunes in it. It's got some scenes when they get to the house with pirates and this old man that gave me nightmares as a kid, and I still think is traumatic to some kids now. It's just a super creepy image, and that's Garfield's Halloween Adventure. Such a great staple Halloween movie. I recommend for anybody of all ages. Add this to your Halloween watch list. I'm sure right now everybody remembers it, and if you haven't, you need to check it out. I did have this DVD, which is Garfield, and it's a holiday celebration, so it's got, you know, Halloween Adventure, Thanksgiving, and Christmas on here. Don't know if this is still available, but this is pretty cool to have because it had all those specials in it from the 80s. Just love those Garfield's holiday specials. So that one had to make the list. It's an all-time classic. The last one I'm going to talk about is from 1986. It was a made-for-TV type of Halloween special, and it's more of a movie than a lot of the ones that I talk about here, and this is The Worst Witch. What an all-star cast here. You had a young Fruga Balt. She played the main character. She's part of like a school, and she's technically the worst witch at this witch academy type thing. A lot of this reminded me of like Annie. It had a lot of singing in it, so there was a little bit of a musical element. The standout to me is Tim Curry. He has this music number, this dance number. Amazing stuff. This is one I think a lot of kids from the 80s remember. This is hard to find on physical media. I know it does have a DVD out, but this is one that a lot of people will probably remember from this time. You can find it on YouTube, The Worst Witch. There's been other adaptations of this throughout the years, but the one that I'm talking about is from the 80s. You've got Mrs. Garrett in there from Facts of Life. I mean, it's a real cool story. It's just, again, it's a fun kids witches academy with a lot of singing and stuff. So super fun movie, and it's one that a lot of people really love. And I'm surprised this hasn't gotten more of a physical media presence. But The Worst Witch from 1986 is my last one. Again, none of these are ranked. It's just 10 of what I think are some of the best Halloween specials made for kids from the 70s and 80s. Like I said, I love doing these lists. It seems like you guys love these lists. It's spooky season. Let's find some different things to watch. Let's go back in time and find some of that stuff that we really love to watch as kids that we can rewatch now ourselves or with our own kids. So let me know down below about any of these 10 that I talked about. Have you seen them? Do you remember them? Did it unlock some memories? And let me know down below, are there any that you watched constantly as a kid that you remember that you absolutely love that maybe did not make this list? Now, there was some in here that I can give honorable mentions. Obviously, you know, you have things like The Midnight Hour, which is really cool. To me, that was a little bit... I watched that as more of a teenager. It did come out around this time, but I watched that as I was a little bit older. It's not such a kid friendly. There's some elements that are a little above some of the stuff we talked about today, but that's a real good one that I highly recommend. So there are a lot out there that you guys could definitely go check out. Again, guys, I hope you like this one. Again, it's only 70s and 80s. I could do a whole nother one on the 90s. You just let me know if it's something you want me to add is 90s. I could talk about television Halloween episodes. Man, the 80s and 90s was such a great time. That was my childhood, so I'd be happy to talk about more 90s stuff. But right now, 70s, 80s is where it's at, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys have a great spooky season. Thank you so much for checking this out. This is Garrett at Born2beRad, and like always, stay